Even though the supposed Red Menace was just a few miles to the east ready to swallow them up, Western Europeans were far less afraid of it than the United States, sitting half a world away. It was very clear to Francisco why Europeans were allowed to experiment with social democracy and even communist politics while her country had been taken away from her forever. Racism, very simply. White Europeans are offered tolerance and sympathetic treatment, while we are not. When Frank Wisner and Howard Jones were working to re-engineer West Germany's financial system after World War II, the U.S. government wiped out all public and private debt as they created the new Deutschmark. One shudders to think how a major third world leader perceived as anti-American or communist would have been treated if his country tried the same thing after a war of independence. In Western Europe's capitalist democracies, moderate and radical left-wing parties alike served as constant critics of the economic order from within the system without ever taking it over entirely. Of course, the CIA was still active in Europe, scheming in ways we still don't really understand. The Operation Gladio stay-behind networks that grew out of Wisner's early days continued into the 1980s. But when European governments shifted too far right for citizens, voters shifted to the parties on the left and vice versa, and that was allowed. Why did Cold War Washington let Western Europe get away with all this light socialism when similar policy orientations led to violent intervention in the Third World? Was it only that, as Francisca said, Americans simply trusted their European cousins, who were white and therefore responsible, to handle the task of managing democracy? A complementary explanation might be that these countries, some still overseeing remnants of colonial empire, were incredibly rich and powerful. They were much harder to push around, even if Washington had wanted to, and perhaps more importantly, they sat at the top of the world economy. They were being fully integrated into the U.S.-led system, and so there was much less of a risk they would try to radically reshape the global order because it had served them quite well.